From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
I believe that we all know what a powerful story Easter carries. And it's a story that has been told billions of times to billions of people through the years. And, you know, historically, it's a very powerful story. Jesus is taken to a hill called Golgotha, nailed on a cross there to die, placed in a tomb, the stone rolled in front. 3 days later, he has arisen, victory, overcoming, showing essentially that death is not the thing that it appears to be, that there is more to us than the physical form, that we are truly spiritual beings. Beyond the literal, beyond the historical, there is a symbolism in the images of that story that basically carry universal truths and a universal message. Because we can all have really a Good Friday experience, or several, as we go through life. We face difficult challenges, we go through painful experiences. Our life as we know it or as we knew it may actually seem to die, come to an end. Great change. We find ourselves in a dark place, a tomb of gloom. We can be sad, we can be depressed, we can feel defeated. And so we're going through then this transformative process of transitioning back into life again, trying to recreate our life and trying to find the good again, to get through that dark time. Now, Jesus was always showing us that with God, there is really nothing to fear. He taught us that we were to do away with fear and instead be filled with love. And that's a big part of the process. All of us go through fear and are in the process of widening and broadening to the experience of love. And that with God and with love, then all things begin to work together for good. And good then shall be victorious. Good is always wanting to be victorious in our lives. And so Jesus' message did not convey really that there is no death, because as you all know, we all die. We all die the physical death of the physical, and that's a part of life. But that is not the end, because we know, as the teaching is, that we're more than form. And that's what all the masters and mystics, that's what Jesus was demonstrating. You go into the New Testament and you can find over and over again evidence of them talking about the idea that you have a mortal body and an immortal body. You have the physical body and you have the spiritual body. You have the earthly body and you have the heavenly body. You have the body that is seen and the body that is unseen. And so, again, talking about that distinction all of the time. The seen of us returns to dust. The unseen of us is eternal. It's important to understand that that is your true identity. That, yes, you do turn to dust, but you are an eternal being. There's a wonderful story, actually a true story. I was in a waiting room in a hospital a few years back, and there was a dear friend and congregant that was having surgery. And it was a long surgery, about 3 hours, and was in the waiting room there. And some of this woman's friends were there. And they knew each other. And they were talking and sharing stories. And I was just kind of listening. And one of the ladies shared a story that she had from just a few days earlier. And basically, she had been in conversation at her home with a friend. Her granddaughter happened to be there. Her granddaughter was 5 years old, and the granddaughter was listening in. And the conversation with this mutual friend was that they had a person who had, a mutual friend that had passed on, and that person had decided to become cremated and have their ashes spread in the mountains of Colorado. And the two adults continued to elaborate on if they were spreading their ashes, where they would want them to go. And they were in different places, and they gave their reasons. And then this little 5-year-old granddaughter was kind of puzzled as to what that was all about and asked. And so the grandmother said, well, honey, when a person dies, they can choose to be cremated, which is to have their body turned into ashes, and their spirit lives on. But sometimes people ask to have their ashes spread over a place that they really love to go to and love to be at. And the little girl, her eyes get big, and she immediately responds and says, Well then, when I die, I want my ashes to be spread all over Toys R Us. That may change. Well, Easter's not about spreading ashes. It's more about spreading God's light and realizing that's who we are. Spreading God's light into dark places, difficult places. It's about resurrecting the Christ Spirit in us. It's about letting our Christ light shine. The mission of Jesus was really to show us who we are and who we could become and what we were capable of when we establish our connection with truth and with this resurrecting Spirit. When we are connected with that Spirit within, we become a part of all that is good in this life and in this world and in this universe. There's a wonderful piece of writing that is one of my favorites. I've tucked it away and I refer to it from time to time, and it's really talking about this idea that we can awaken to this truth, get glimpses of it, and it's called A Vision. It was written by Anna Dershell, and I'm going to share it with you now and just kind of soak in the essence of what it's talking about. It goes like this: in moments rare, there comes to me a vision unexpected. I clearly see within my soul the universe reflected. I am a part of all that's good. I feel I know no limit. The God in all stands forth so clear, no fancied ills can dim it. No matter what life's future hours may hold of earthborn sadness, I know there comes to me in truth a heritage of gladness that far transcends all grosser things. I've caught the vision glorious. We are a part of all that's good, and good shall be victorious. I love that. I love that. The last three lines: I've caught the vision glorious. We are a part of all that's good, and good shall be victorious. That's really the story of Easter. So what is the vision? It is that there is a part of us that is of God. There is a part of us that is of God. We may not always be awake to it. We may not always be living from it, but it is a part of all that is good, that dimension of us. And we are to see and connect with this dimension of us that is divine, that is holy, that is sacred, that houses within the temple of our physical form. And we are to have it rise, and we are to have it come alive, be given life in us. We all have a Christ in us, really. And actually, you need to know that the word Christ is synonymous with what the Old Testament refers to as the image and likeness by which you were created. The image and likeness is the Christ. The Christ is the manifestation of the image and likeness. And that's what Jesus was about. He was not the great exception. He was the great example. And he said to follow him into the path of relationship with the divine that he was modeling and demonstrating. Oneness with the source and oneness with the truth of who he was. And Christianity has mostly focused on the divinity of Jesus, and he was divine. But if you really see it, the fact is Jesus focused mostly on ours. He said, the things that I do, you can do also, and greater things than these. And many things he was trying to raise us into an awareness of a spirit that lived within us. Jesus, again, wanted us to have that same relationship that he had. And Jesus, as you know, used many I am statements. I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And there were others. And if we go to Exodus, the book of Exodus, we find the conversation that went on between Moses and God. And Moses asks, who shall I say sent me, on this mission? What's your name? And God says to him, my name is I am. I am that I am. So we discover that when Jesus was saying I am, followed by a truth, he was speaking from the God within him, All right? He was in effect saying, the God within me is the bread of life. The God within me is the resurrection and the life. The God within me is the way, the truth, and the life. And because his mission was to awaken us to that dimension of the divine within us, he was essentially then saying, through all that he taught, the God within you is your bread of life. The God within you is your resurrection and life. The God within you is your life and way, truth, and life. And so the God within us is known by lots of names. It's known by I am. It's known by Christ. You remember Paul saying, the secret that has been hidden for ages and generations, which is Christ in you, your hope of glory. He understood. He knew. There's all kinds of names that come or are used for this dimension of us that is divine. Sometimes the God self, the sacred self, the higher self. In other religions, it's called the Buddha within, or the Atman, or the Antriyaman, various names. But there is that part of us that is of God. And it is a part of all that is good. And that part of us that some would say is the sonship. That basically we're all part of a sonship, the Son of God ship, so to speak. And meaning that we're not all necessarily expressing it, but we all have it inherent in us to be that Christ self. And it's been taught that Jesus was the only Son of God. But that's not what Paul said. If you read what Paul said, he said in chapter 8 of Romans, you can go there. He said, for as many as are led by the Spirit, they are sons of God. And he went on from there to even explain and expound. And he said, we are children of God. And if we are children of God, then we are heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, which is to say, we are heirs to everything that was moving through Jesus. And that's why Jesus got so frustrated oftentimes with his disciples. Sometimes they couldn't get it. A lot of times we don't, or we don't want to even. So there's a decision that we have to be making on a daily basis, hour by hour sometimes, as we have decisions to make. Are we going to be led by this Spirit within us? Are we going to let the sonship or the son part of us shine through, speak through us, lead us, guide us? Or are we going to kind of live from this separation existence? God's out there and life is out there and I'm here on my own, or all the stuff that goes on in our mind. So that's the trip, that's the journey, is awakening to that. The Course in Miracles, which some of you study, it's a great course. It has a suggestion as to what can be helpful to find a way to be led by this Spirit within. And it's two parts to it. And it can be lived through your day every day. And it's this. First part, think honestly what you have thought that God would not have thought. Second part, think honestly what God would have you think that you have not thought. As you go into any situation, wow, those are tremendous questions and rules of thumb to live by. In the spiritual lost and found department, the biggest and the most important item to find is that part of God within you. We're all looking for it. We all should be, and we all should be awakening to it. The Easter message is about finding that part, really, the Son of God part of us, and coming and bringing it forth out of the dark tomb, out of the shadows of unawakenedness and ignorance, and resurrecting it back into our livingness. And so there is a lost part of most of us, or if not a lost part, it's a part of us that's been covered over, much as Jesus said, you have a light in you. Don't let that light get covered over. Let your light shine. Let the God in you shine. Jesus was very clear about that. There's a wonderful parable where he talked about this as well, this lost part. And it was referred to as the parable of the lost coin. It's very short. Let me share this with you. It states this. This is Jesus talking. What woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she loses one piece, does not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls her friends and her neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I had lost. And then he says to the listeners, likewise, I say to you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one who has lost his way and finds it. Now the scriptures say, a sinner that repents. But that's what it means. One who has lost his way, made a mistake, erred, and now has moved beyond it. I love that line in there that it says, rejoice with me, for I have found the peace which I had lost. And there is that sense of nothing is more important than seeking diligently for that peace, is what he's saying. But sometimes we have lost that spiritual peace. It comes and goes. It does, let's be honest. Sometimes we've lost that love peace, or that joy peace, or the playful peace, or the forgiving peace. It happens. And then as the poem, a piece of writing that I early shared, as it states this, in moments rare, there comes to me a vision unexpected. I clearly see within my soul the universe reflected. I am part of all that's good. In other words, there are in moments rare that we remember again. And that's the journey, remembering again and again. We may have stones to roll away, to find that lost or hidden part of us. That's a part of life. And if we persevere, and if we allow ourselves to be led by this spirit within, and if we allow ourselves to be led by the energies of love, then there are times where we can be led to our good, no matter what the circumstances. Back in 1989, there was an earthquake in a place called Armenia. Really happened, true story. It was registered 8.2 on the Richter scale. It killed 30,000 people in a matter of 4 seconds. And in the midst of the devastation and chaos, there was a father, and he made sure that his wife was okay. They had survived it in their home, but their son was at a school, and his name was Ahmad. And so he rushed to the school to see whether he was okay. He got there, and the school had been totally flattened. And the name of the son was Armand. And the father remembered a promise that he had made to his son, that no matter what, he said, I'll always be there for you. So with tears in his eyes, he went and remembered that the classroom had been located in the back right corner of the building. And so he went there and he started digging and pulling debris and rubble away. And other parents, forlorn, came and they said to him, it's too late. They're dead. You can't help. Go home. Face reality. There's nothing you can do. But he always simply said, so are you going to help me now? The fire chief appeared and said, fires can be breaking out here. You're in danger. Go home. Face reality. He said, are you going to help me now? A policeman came. He said, I need help. I need help. And he said, you're endangering others. And he said, are you going to help me now? So anyway, nobody helped him. And so he kept digging. And he had to know whether his son was dead or alive, somewhere in that mess. And so he kept pulling and pulling. And 8 hours went by, 12 hours went by, 24 hours went by, 36 hours went by. And in the 38th hour, he heard his son's voice. And he screamed his son's name, Armand! And he heard back, Dad, it's me, Dad. I told the other kids not to worry. I told them that if you were alive, you'd be there, that you had promised you'd always be there. And you did it, Dad. You see, when the building had collapsed, it made a wedge somehow with some of the structure. And it created like a little triangle in there. And 14 of the 33 kids survived in that little tent-like place. Granted, lots of souls lost their lives in that earthquake, and there was definitely sadness. But in this one corner of devastation, a father was led by the spirit of love to persevere, to keep searching, to keep digging, to keep looking, and finally found a sort of a piece, a lost piece of his family, his son. The second stanza of that poem that we shared goes like this. No matter what life's future hours may hold of earthborn sadness, I know there comes to me a truth, a heritage of gladness that far transcends all grosser things. I've caught the vision glorious We are a part of all that's good, and good shall be victorious. It's something we need to learn, because not everything goes right in life. But as long as we follow that spirit somehow, the good shall be victorious. And sometimes it takes courage to trust in being led. You know, we are connected to one power and one presence all the time, but our role is to allow that to come alive in us. There's years ago, a guy named Dave Austin gave a talk, and I remember this talk, and he talked about himself first, saying, you know, he was always very traditional, his God was always out there, but then he changed, and he came to the realization that, wow, God is actually within, and God is this presence and power, and is able to move and do incredible things if we listen. And so he came to that place where he was just full of that feeling of connectedness with God. And he gave an example during that time where it was very intense. His wife was about to give birth to their fourth son, and they'd already named it Daniel. And so he was on a business trip, and the doctor was a friend of the family. He called, and the doctor was crying and saying, you know, your wife's in danger. And so they were going to have to deliver the child in like 7 or 8 days, he said, in order to really keep the risk minimized. And so he flew home. When he got home and landed, he was told that it had gone such that she was going to surgery immediately for a C-section, not 7 or 8 days, right then and there. So he went to the hospital. There were 9. He scrubbed up, put on the robe, went in there. There were 9 specialists, all with worried looks. He went to his wife. His wife was calm. She said, it's going to be fine. So they took the baby out, and it was deep purple, was not breathing, it was in a coma, there was no life. They were all frantically working to try and get this child to start breathing. And that's when a thought came into Dave, the father. And his next thought was, do I act on this? You know, do I have the courage? This is my son. Yes, I do. And he went over while they're all working on it, and he went in and put his hand on the little infant's tiny little leg, premature, and said, Daniel, I want you to feel the power of my love, and I want you to feel the power of God's healing grace. And in the next moment, that little infant's eyes popped open. He had a little jerk and opened his eyes and looked into the eyes of his father, and his life began. Now, it wasn't over. He had complications. They said that the child would be in the hospital for months. It ended up 2 weeks later, he was carrying that child, Daniel, out of the hospital, and there was one of the nurses from intensive care unit that had been in and witnessed this. She came up to him as he was leaving and said, I have never, in my 27 years, ever witnessed anything like this. But he was bold. He was courageous. He followed something of the spirit that just was moving in him. The poem says, in moments rare there comes to me a vision unexpected. I clearly see within my soul the universe reflected. I am a part of all that's good. I feel I know no limit. The God in all stands forth so clear, no fancied ills can dim it. At times we're called to be bold and courageous. One last story. A friend and a congregant sent me a magazine article, and it was an article in which a lady named Carol Tarrant told a personal story about her going back some years. Her personality when she was young, she said, was always backing away from life, retreating, going into hiding, playing it safe. She went to a big, large college in the States somewhere away so she could hide. Basically, she had a bad experience in her adolescence in which there were mean girls that caused her to become quiet and withdrawn. And so she hid out reading books. Even when she went to college, she was just hanging out in the library where it was safe and nobody talked and left you alone. But she finally came to the place enough to say, I need to make some friends. And she volunteered for a campus club. And the campus club was hosting a famous speaker, and she had volunteered, and she was to meet this person backstage when they arrived and came through the door. And so she was there, and she was nervous, and the person came through the door, and this was 30 years ago, and the person was Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou came through the door, and she looked gorgeous. She had high heels, and she had a full-length fur coat. And so this lady, Carol, nervously asked to take her coat off, and when Maya was ready to go on stage, she said, well, is it okay if I babysit your fur coat back here, backstage? And she at first thought it was okay, and she started to head out toward the stage to speak, and she stopped suddenly. And she looked back at Carol, and their eyes met, and she said, no, you need to get out there. Just intuitively. And Maya looked at the audience again that she was heading towards, looked back one more time to her, and she said, you need to get out there and live. And so she put the coat somewhere and went out into the audience and enjoyed the night. But that statement stayed with her the rest of her life. And there were moments when she came up against something she was afraid of, wanted to hide from, wanted to retreat from, and those words, get out there and live, would ring through her consciousness that Maya had shared. So folks, today we have stressed what Jesus taught about the resurrection principle, that you are part of God, that God is part of you, that there is the God within, that we are led to be led by love, that good shall be victorious, and that we are to give this Spirit in us life. So prayer is very powerful. You need to know an affirmative prayer is. And when we pray and we hold the same prayer together in the intent, that basically the prayer is squared. That means 2 people praying is not 2 people, it's 4. 4 people praying is not 4, it's 16. 500 people praying is to the power of 250,000. 1,000 people, like we have here or more, is to the power of 1 million. So I want you all to rise. Stand up where you are. I want this side of the room split in half by the center aisle, and that includes the balcony, to look to this way, and you all look that way. Face each other, all right? You may not be able to put eyes on everyone, but just know that your prayers will find the heart and soul of every individual. I want the people on my right to say and repeat after me to all of these people. Feel it in your heart, and you people receive it. Repeat after me. Rise up. Rise up. Become joint heirs with Christ. Look to the God within you. Be led by the Spirit of love. You are part of all that's good. So get out there and live. All right, I want you folks, you've just received, to say, repeat after me. Rise up. Become joint heirs with Christ. Look to the God within you. Be led by the Spirit of love. You are part of all that's good. So get out there and live. Wish each other a happy Easter. The night is over and the dawn of a new day is here. God bless you all.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.